high price in the global market. And illicit trade in cultural artifacts account for billions of dollars. Now, it's a trade that is often at the expense of a country's collective sense of self, a people's collective sense of self. I mean, it, if it is so you don't know your history, and if you don't have symbols of your history, it is a blow to your sense of nationhood and etc. While we were there, it was incidental that Bolivia had recovered 180, no, a year old, hundred year old relic that was missing for 108 something years. It was in Europe, but it was illicitly traded. So a part of that was recovery. So we've committed essentially to support all efforts like that from the perspective of UNISOR. As with regard to what we have benefited, um, we've we've placed for a very long time far too little emphasis on culture. The reality is culture, which is in a very broad sense, the essence of who we are, how we do things, how we interact with each other, how we live, um, and it's not just the music, etc. It's food, it's worship, it's all of these things combined. We It's the only real asset that we have. We don't have any. We don't have only real unique asset that we have. Gold prices go fluctuate around the world, etc. We have no great massive army and so, but in a world that is increasingly interconnected, and with civilizations are clashing, etc. You see a lot of conflict. Um, One of the unique things that we have in Guyana, and in a lot of the we call the former colonies, of which people South America consisted, Caribbean, etc. Um, we have our unique history of the globe coming together at a far earlier time than it is now, and negotiating. I mean, we in Guyana, we've done a terrible job at it, but and that is actually a gift in itself, in that once we overcome our challenges of cultural divisions, etc., can be a sort of beacon to the rest of the world. So that's why culture is critical, from a very not from an abstract sense, from a practical sense of we call soft power, negotiation, etc., and influence within global spaces. We don't have a large population, but we do have the the very fact of an irreducible statehood. And so, in terms of how we can leverage that influence, we are part of CARICOM, we're part of UNISOR, we're part of Mercosur especially. We are often the one country that these regional blocks have in common.
In saying all of that, let me put you on the spot here. You just identified that the culture really and truly should be bigger than it is right now in Guyana in terms of us securing ourselves and so
I've
on.
been saying that for the past so many years. The
All right.
reality is now is that the global thing has come up, it's caught up with it. The culture from we had the MDGs, Millennium Development Goals, as a specific global agenda that lasted until this year. Post 2015, post MDG, you have what you call the Sustainable Development Goals, right? UNESCO, the UN, has recognized culture as an inextricable part of sustainable development. You can't plan an economic recovery program for one country, right? It doesn't matter if you have similar population and anything, and then put it in another country and expect it to work without taking into account the particular culture of that country, right? You can't plan to, I don't know, grow a certain crop for one country and put it in another country and say that the thing. I mean, you can't give a Bajan man cook up and say, eat this for the rest of your life and stuff like that. although it's a nutritional plan. Culture very often is the key reason why economic, social, and other plans succeed or fail. So culture is going to be increasingly mainstream in development. Um, if it is the we can, if it is, I think we can definitely be preemptive under in a lot of ways.
What specific, well, I don't want you to tell tales out of school because certain things you can't make public as yet, but what specific plans do you have in mind, or I should say, is the team working on to ensure that all these things you're talking about are addressed?
Um, Now, I've spoken to both ministers who've agreed in, that, first of all, that we need to have a national consultation on culture and the creative industries. The plan is to focus on, again, three areas. First of all, cultural heritage, which is part of what the UNICEF meeting was about, inclusive and outside of the declaration. Creative industries, which means how do we get income? How do we diversify our economy using cultural and artistic expressions? And a lot of, in terms of music, a lot of preparatory work has already gone into. Uh, Even in the past couple of Minister Rupin Ryan is extremely insistent on music education in schools, etc., which is part of the developmental mechanism. Um, and he's insisted on we call STEM plus A or STEAM education, which is the STEM subjects, it's core science subjects, which are critical for development, but of course, but including an arts or humanities component.
Yeah.
Then there is a third component of what the consultation will be, which is a direct way of mainstreaming culture and development in ways that are not captured in cultural heritage and creative industries development. Right. So, but to be fair, we've already seen it in different ways. A good example is this: the ministry Wednesday launched in Bartica an education, early childhood development and education project. The First Lady was there, and Minister Henry did the feature address and thing. Not only was that an example of the ministry committing to or showing demonstrable commitment to the promise of decentralizing education, but also one of the components of the project is to change the curriculum on early childhood education to be more culturally relevant overall, inclusive of the translation of certain we call big books into Amerindian languages. President Granger has made his commitment to preservation of Amerindian languages. From the ministry perspective, I mean, there's a team currently in place, an American student who's doing some private work. But they've asked her to come in and talk to us because she's using technology, like Rosetta Stone type technology, to have a computerized way of both capturing and teaching indigenous languages. So that's an example of mainstreaming culture in development.
And here is where I guess where you're linking education and culture, because another concern was that, look, you take everything and you put it on the ministry. When I say everything, of course, I mean youth, sport, culture.
Yeah.
So I guess this is where the argument would come in for people who are concerned that there is no youth ministry, there is no culture, youth, and sport ministry.
The task of government is not to form ministries for form ministry's sake. The task of government is to ensure that the development of the people is done as smoothly as possible. Originally, up to about 1996, it used to be the Ministry of Education and Culture. Before it was delinked, etc. I recently came back from when I was in Uruguay at the UNICEF meeting. It is the Ministry of Education. It was the Ministry of Education, Scientific Development, Youth, social cohesion, and something else. There's like five.
That's their ministry. Okay.
Most of the ministries that I've dealt with in terms of things, link first of all, education and culture. They see it as an inextricable part of the thing.
Okay.
With regard to the whole sport and youth thing, in terms of functionality, first of all, there's a National Sports Commission, which is an almost semi-autonomous body, statutory body, which can work, can and does work. Well, should work. And we have a good friend Chris Jones heading the now, which is going to bring some vision and competence to it. That could work with the various sports organizations, etc. In a thing way. Then there's supposed to be a National Youth Commission which has to be established, which has a similar function. And then there is the very direct act of employing a presidential advisor on youth,
Okay.
which is Mr. Norton, who's extremely
yeah.
energetic, etc., who's done in a very short time. One of my criticisms has been there was not national youth policy, and there were
Policy.
several iterations of it that were, for me, deliberately scuttled, because a youth policy has to deal with youth development issues from a baseline, and some of the baselines that some of the baselines that were found, I don't think were politically pleasing to the previous administration. The youth suicide issue, for example, that youths in Guyana are overwhelmingly affected by suicide. So we had the case of a youth department within a ministry that was deliberately dysfunctional, as opposed to now where you have a youth sub-department, but which still, which has been supplemented by a presidential advisor on youth, but most importantly, is functioning, and will be functioning from under a clear-cut policy that is finally in place, that will finally be in place.
All right. Let's move on and go into a bit. They're all connected, but a bit of a different area. First of all, you've already made it clear that Ruel Johnson, he's never had a party card.
No, not once.
Right, thus being able to be neutral and somewhat stand in the middle and see everything from a different eye. Have we gone to a place where we have promoted youth enough? The fact is, the youth population expected a whole lot from the new administration, even before the coalition became the youth administration. Some of them feel let down and disappointed, and they are still expecting a lot from the current administration regarding addressing the issues of youth. We all know it has only been 4 months.
Yeah.
Again, not a cliche, Rome wasn't built in a day. But how would you, and again, my question is coming to you as someone who strongly criticized the previous government and even the opposition then for what you thought was not them doing enough to hold that previous administration accountable. What do you want to say to youths who would have listened to things that people like Ruel Johnson would have said, held on to it? Yes, but these people need to put youth first. Youth, it is a very large population of the youth who voted a new government in. How do you speak to those people now who are still somewhat a bit disappointed?
No, first of all, I've always said that youth should place youth first. And I've illustrated time and time again that the independence movement in Guyana wasn't founded by grand old men. Every single body that started the independence movement or that were involved at a critical time were in their mid to early 20s. No, so early 20s to probably late 20s, the oldest. Chetty, Ashton Chase, Burnham, Music Choir, all in the 20s. They're 10 years younger than I am now. I just turned 35, right? These were people who were critically involved in not politics in a more or less in a 50-year-old independent country, but in the very revolutionary act of making that country independent in the first place. A lot of problem we have with youth currently is that they don't believe in themselves. You have to have a in addition to that, I think our political structure which is why I've avoided party structures, is that because of the divisions and because of the need to consolidate, what I believe is a party core, quite frankly, on all sides, have been injurious to any budding sort of youth ascendancy. Now, the this is on one hand. On the other hand, the even if we were to say that all the old men, it's primarily old men, because there's a gender component of it as well, or to suddenly say, fine, we will step down and we'll have youth function and stuff like that, and you'd say we'll take it up. There hasn't been any sort of mentorship or trans process within a functional.
Ruel, let me interject here. What can we do to ensure that? Is this a case where, because, and this is not me trying to not me trying to badger or to attack some, what I would call, because even though Ruel has never been has never had a party card, I have one.
Yeah.
So this is not me trying to attack some of my own leaders. But the fact is, I feel that and this goes for on the both what you want to call political giants in our nation. I do not believe that there are systems in place that the public can see whereby young people are actively enough, I should say enough, because there are some very minor cases, are actively understudying and being trained by not only political leaders but government leaders. Is it a case where the young people need to get up and say, let's ask for this to be done, or should we just wait until the time is nigh, or and I don't know when that will be, because it comes back to, we are young now. In 5 years, we're not necessarily going to be described as young according to the definition of youth in terms of Guyana's politics. So how do we deal with that?
Quite frankly, you come up creatively with. First of all, I think young people need to take the initiative to engage and give those the powers that be a choice of engagement. And the reality is, I think a lot of older people that are vilified or might seem to be vilified with some amount of wisdom are not confident that
The young people can
have the initiative, and they might be justified to some degree. Again, the nature of our political system is very often created an aversion to. I mean, if you have a beauty contest, right, and you know that the promoter is abusive and exploitative of young women, you don't expect that the most intelligent young women are going to, even if they work within the system or they might be doing makeup and stuff like that they will want to ascend. The same way, if it is that you have well, we've had a toxic political system. We've seen some change in it, particularly from the coalition side, because the coalition represents an evolution of that sort of toxic political machinery thing. It's based on compromise. Compromise has been forced by history. Now, something else that has to be forced by history is participation, and it's not just what you see with the political space in terms of a disinclination towards participation. Is something that is symptomatic of the entire citizenry in Guyana. In fact, we hardly qualify as citizens in the sense that a couple of things. One, we don't know the basic mechanics of democracy. Reality is 50 years of independence and how many years of colonial exploitation and indentureship and slavery. Beyond that, we have never had a truly functional democratic space in the full sense of the word. We haven't really approached it. We've had elections, but we haven't had a full understanding. And I've said this before. This is why Minister Rupert Ryan, for example, has insisted on the inclusion, eventual inclusion of civics, which is the understanding of society and politics and how they do that, in the
Into the
school
curriculum.
in the curriculum. Because it has to start with education. We need to know how democracy works before we get involved in democracy, because otherwise we basically will have this is how young people grasping for power, which is not necessarily the same as grasping for public service role within a democratic space. Now you add again the toxic tribalism to it, and we've gotten some misshapen, amorphous understanding of how what we call the social contract. Now once we correct those things, and this is why we have to work on the tribalism, we have to work on social cohesion, even as we work on educating people, and to some degree on constitutional reform. So once we work on those things, those questions about involvement, and you see it in Trinidad, which has had a slightly, well, they've had similar tribalisms. They got the same inane politics, but they also, we have, for example, people like Sham Fakujo,
Trinidad,
in
yes.
Tobago, who is at 33 years, the Minister of Tourism.
Yes.
But she's also extremely well qualified. She's a young woman who stood up and who distinguished herself. And that's not simply a young person, a young woman, which is important in patriarchal societies like these. But also, it's a constituency-based system where the people voted directly for her. So she isn't appointed, she is.
That's the people's choice
That's the
indeed.
people's choice. So we have to we have to evolve. So it's not a clear process of let's get your among people involved. There's something I think in sociology and anthropology called agency, which means the inherent capacity to act ostensibly in one's own self-interest.
Yes.
Young people in Ghana have to develop agency. You have to, and not agency clouded by race or religion
Or greed.
or greed, or lust for power, but agency that sees, even if it's self-interest, it's enlightened self-interest that says, if I build a better society, I'll be a better person. So that is
The essence of it. Well, before I have to let you go, before I choose to let you go,
Thank you.
I should say, and viewers, I should tell you, if we were off camera, he would have had a strange comeback to that sentiment. But of course, we're not going to get into that now. Before I let you go, Ruel, 2016, Guyana will celebrate 50 years as an independent nation. We've talked a whole lot about the fact that it is supposed to be an entire year of grand celebration, of getting in touch and getting closer. And you even talked about this earlier, and understanding the importance of our cultural identity, and so on. Earlier today, I read an article where Minister Henry, that's of course viewers, for those who don't remember, I know some of you are still learning the ministers. Minister Nicolette Henry, she is the minister within the Ministry of Education. She has revealed that there will be absolutely no Mashramani parade 2016. Should it not be a case, and this is as I get your sentiments and whatever plans you can reveal about observing and celebrating our 50th independent anniversary, shouldn't it be a case where every national holiday or national observance next year, shouldn't everything be as big as it possibly can? Why pull from Mashramani? And apart from answering that question, what are some of the things that we could possibly expect?
I know size matters, but size all the time might not be sustainable over an extended period. But I have the benefit of sitting in on a couple of the sitting on the part of the commemoration activities planning, which is very much in the infancy, and so far the minister, what the minister would might have said, um, is that the float aspect of it will be,
Yeah.
all the match money
parade.
activities will be far more subdued than they are. Um, what it is that it's concrete, absolutely concrete. I'm not second guessing her, but
Okay.
what it is that is absolutely concrete, that there will be absolutely no thing, is not issue. I, I expect that it will be minimized. Um, I certainly see space for private initiative um, helping to transform the thing, but the reality is that much of the grand activities that would have been associated with will be
Shifted to.
shifted towards the independence thing. Mashmani is the Republic anniversary. Um, I think the greater the decision has been made to focus more on the independence as opposed to the Republic. Now, that said, next year isn't necessarily going to be, there's going to be an escalation definitely. And I think that's part of the logic of reducing MASH, because we want to escalate things until,
Like a build up and
Yeah.
anticipation.
yeah, to have the climactic events thing. And from a cost management perspective and a resource management perspective, that's entirely sound. But
Okay.
we have to be careful as well of a bread and circuses approach to celebrating independence. 'Cause independence, the the independence, the act of independence, we had independence with the fireworks and all that stuff like that. That was the culmination of a lot of things. Um, a lot of movement towards a certain spirit um, of self-determination, of progress, of government for the people, of and by the people, that we've lost our way on. And part of the purpose of the activities next year
Is to
is
bring that
reflection,
back.
is reflection on what we got right, but also what we got wrong. So as much as there's going to be entertainment, which Guyanese like, yeah, we also have to start looking at the quiet events, the symposia, etc. Um, the public consultations. We've set aside one day in particular for the issue of to focus on social cohesion as a direct branded thing. Although one of the things that we're going to be looking at is ensuring that social cohesion is a common thread to all of the official activities that we have, as much as humanly possible. For me, I think that's the more important thing. People get caught up in issues of mash, yeah, but there's something called bread and circuses. We don't necessarily want that. Yeah, entertainment is good, but it should never be a substitute for reflection and planning for the future, right?
Finally, Ruel, as I now indeed have to let you go, can we expect to see much more of Ruel Johnson's writings? I mean, I can have Ruel back on this program to talk about so much. We didn't touch much on we didn't touch on it at all.
Yeah.
Copyright and so on. But for now, as I have to begin to wrap up with you, because viewers, coming up in a few moments, I will show you a clip of the President of the Cooperative Republic of Guyana speaking on a few current issues that would have been last week during the last week's edition of the Public Interest Program. Ruel, can we expect to see more of your writings being made public? Because the people on social site know Ruel Johnson, the writer, but our young people in schools and so on, being able to gain access to your work.
For me, the wider things is that I intend to work to ensure that there's more access to writing from Guyanese who have not necessarily had the same opportunities I've had.
Okay.
In fact, I've been published. I've done my own editing and publishing, and I've been fortunate. Stuff like the Guyana Prize, etc. But there's this Bocas Prize in Trinidad that is actually coming to Guyana, which I think is a tragedy because we have the Guyana Prize here, but that is doing a workshop for editing. Fiction, etc. And one of the people I know in the sense that it's this Akashic book, People Tree Press thing, Pikash imprint that they published me last year. Oh, sorry, this year. some of my poetry. And but I've been in touch with both editors, Johnny Temple from um, Johnny Temple from Classic and Jeremy Pointing from People Tree. And what was happening now, and I've spoken to Temple in particular, is that we now have the opportunity in Guyana to see more emerging young writers, and we've been behind on the region. So, both from the ministry perspective and from, gladly, incidentally, from private sector, international perspectives like inputs like these, we will see, inclusive of my work, once it is that I could ask the minister some time off. More fiction, more poetry being published at a high quality from young Guyanese creative people. And this is something I've been insisting on for the past couple of years. So that's it.
Well, we trust that you can get definitely get that time off, because that will certainly benefit our society. Viewers, what we'll do now is take a break, and by the time I come back, it will be time to wrap up today's program. But for now, take a look at this clip where His Excellency, the President of the Cooperative Republic of Guyana, Brigadier David Granger, addressed some current issues during last week's program of the public interest. Stay tuned. Let's first begin with what's happened, or I should say what has happened in Trinidad and Tobago. Following recent elections, of course, Mr. Keith Rowley, actually Dr. Keith Rowley, is now the new Prime Minister of that Twin Island Republic. What does the change from a partnership government mean to Guyana's current partnership government at this time?
Well, I don't think that the entry of the PNM as a single party into the government of Trinidad and Tobago is necessarily significant in terms of its comparison with a coalition or a partnership. What is significant is that Guyana's relations with Trinidad and Tobago will remain intact. Trinidad is a very important economy, a very important part of the Caribbean community. And in our relations with Venezuela, particularly this year, in the wake of the decree issued by President Maduro, Trinidad was very strong in support of Guyana, and I'm confident that Dr. Rowley will maintain this position. Trinidad has traditionally been very strong in support of Guyana's territorial integrity. From the time of Dr. Eric Williams, we have been able to rely on Trinidad and Tobago. So the significance is that Trinidad and Tobago will remain a staunch partner within the Caribbean community.
All right. So let's now move to your quest to reform Guyana's public service. What are some of the main initiatives that would have to be taken to ensure that this is done?
Well, within the first week of entering office, I announced that I was interested in a strong professional public service. And part of that professionalism will come from training. So we intend to establish a public service training college so that all new entrants into the public service would receive training before they take up their appointments. So that is the basis of the first initiative. At the higher levels, of course, we want to see more career public servants so that when new ministers or political appointees enter their jobs, at whatever level, there will be a cadre of trained public servants who could advise and guide and do research and provide information for them. So we expect that in the fullness of time, certainly during the course of the next 5 years, there will be a stronger and more professional public service than we have at present.
And sir, finally, before I give the other members of the panel an opportunity to pose their questions, when you initially took office, you were on a quest to make Guyana, quote unquote, a green nation. There seems to be a bit of a slowdown where that is concerned. What are your sentiments on us going forward in terms of making Guyana a green nation?
Well, my first sentiment is one of disagreement. I believe that the idea of greenness is catching on. I see the Mayor and City Council in Georgetown have announced that Georgetown is to become the cleanest and greenest city in the Caribbean. So I would believe that it is gaining momentum. The whole idea is to tackle the problems of solid waste tackle the problems of litter, tackle the problems of the destruction of trees and parapets and vegetation, and the parking of vehicles, helter-skelter in the city. But we also want to see, as of on the 3rd of October next month, there'll be National Tree Planting Day. We want to see more vegetation. We want to see the parks being restored, the parade, what used to be called the parade ground, now Independence Park, the Promenade Gardens, the Botanical Gardens. We want to see a regreening of Georgetown, and we want to take this message to other places, Bartica, Mahdia, Lethem, Mabaruma. We want to see Guyana greening again. So it's not just cleaning, but it's also making Guyana more environmentally friendly as well.
Okay, thank you very much, sir.
But we're not slowing down.
Okay, great to know, sir. At this time, I'd like to open up or to invite the other journalists on the panel to pose their questions, of course, regarding some of our lead topics and other questions that they may have, beginning with Ms. Allen from Starbrook News.
Mr. President, in relation to Trinidad, could you say what are some of the priorities that we'll be discussing with Trinidad? And would this include accessing oil from Trinidad?
All right. Unfortunately, we had to cut that because we're out of time, but I know you did hear a bit from His Excellency, the President, Brigadier David Granger. I must tell you, of course, he plans to appear on Facing the Nation sometime soon, but as you know, the President of the nation, and again, people keep saying that we have taken over a house with leaks, cracks, loose pipes, dust, cobweb, everything that you can think about. So fixing the nation, even though he has the support of his cabinet, fixing the nation is a very big task, and he is currently busy tending to those matters. So eventually, I know it's impossible for his schedule to probably slacken up, but eventually he will certainly fit Facing the Nation in to his schedule. I'd like to take this opportunity to once again thank Mr. Ruel Johnson for appearing on today's program of Facing the Nation. Just to remind you, Ruel Johnson is currently serving in an advisory capacity at the Ministry of Education in the Culture Department. That's an advisory capacity to both ministers, both the minister within the Ministry of Education, that's Nicolette Henry, and Minister of Education, Dr. Rupert Rupnarai. I am Malika Ramsey. Thank you very much for tuning in. Be good Guyanese citizens. Take care of yourselves. Take care of each other. And of course, join me again next time. Goodbye.
Thank you very much.